Good morning, everybody. We're here for lecture 21, The History of Life on Earth. When I look at the outline of what we're going to talk about today, the majority of the lecture is on evidence of evolution. Like, how do we know that the process of evolution actually takes place? How do we know that it's evolution that gives rise to this history that we are ultimately going to talk about and the biodiversity that we're getting to for the rest of this course? I think that is important. I think it's important to talk about the evidence for evolution and why. I think sometimes as instructors or biologists, we get into this place where we understand the evidence for evolution because we've been biologists for our whole lives. And the evidence is it's building. We continually see more and more lines that support these processes of evolution. But as someone who maybe hasn't got that background, it's important for us to address the fact that evidence is important. Like you gotta understand why we think what we think. The process of evolution is such a great example of the process of science because we're always adding to the evidence and always questioning, which is such a lovely and important part of scientific thinking and critical thinking. I think one of the hardest parts about studying evolution and thinking about the evidence is the dealing with the massive numbers that we are going to be looking at and the massive amount of time that passes in order for this to occur. We have looked at big numbers, like we talked about a mole, 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, which is 602 sextillion things. Compared to a dozen things is 12, a mole of things is 602 sextillion. And that number is like, dude, I don't even know, like, how do you even quantify a number like that? So I made a little chart for us to try, there's my chart, to try and think about like, okay, and I didn't go very far on this, but there's lots of big numbers here. I went up to what? It looks like I went up to quadrillion because the numbers started to get a little, they're repetitive. You can just multiply by 1,000 and you get the next number on here. But I wanted you to think about big numbers. 10, if we counted one number a second, how long would it take us to count to the number 10? Well, 10 isn't a big number, so it would take you 10 seconds. And you're like, yeah, dude, seriously, Riggs? And if you count to 100, which is 10 times 10, it's going to take you 1 minute and 40 seconds to get there. Like, still, 100 is not a huge number. But it's weird to me that going from 100 to 1,000, so that's 10 hundreds, it takes 16 minutes and 40 seconds to get there. Like, if you count one number a second. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure you can verbalize one number a second. Like, that would be really challenging to do. But you could set a timer and go count up a certain number of seconds and get there. 10,000 is going to take 2 hours and 47 minutes to get there. Like, and I did these calculations using factor labeling, dimensional analysis. I just converted between I tried to convert how many hours is 100,000 seconds. Dude, it's 28 hours. Like, and then a million, it's going to take you 11 days and 14 hours to count to a million. And a billion, it's going to take you 31.7 years. My point in showing you this is only that we're going to talk about some big numbers. In fact, the age of the universe is 13.8 billion years. So if we were to count to 13.8 billion, we would go 31.7 years times 13.8. And that's going to tell us how long it would take us to count to that number. And that's the age of the universe. The age of our solar system, oh my gosh, I can do this. I promise. Our Our Earth is 4.6 billion years old. That's how old our Earth is. The first life happened 3.7 billion years ago. Okay, let's just stop there. Let's just go, okay, we're going to be talking about what happened from that first life 3.7 billion years ago to now. And it would take us 31 times 3.7 years to count to that number. The point is only, I am belaboring the point, but the point is only that we are talking about a massive amount of time. So if you are trying to say, why can't I see it? Where's the evidence? I don't see it around me. Take a breath and remember the actual amount of time that has passed since this has begun. And I think keeping that in your brain will make it a little bit easier. So let me just tell you the things that we're going to talk about. We're going to first of all look at the geological time scale, because that's a scale that we can use on Earth. That's starting from the beginning of Earth time, 4.6 billion years ago. And then we're going to look at how do we know how old the rocks are? And there are a couple of strategies that we use for that. We're going to take a little bit of time to talk about the fossil record, and I have a book for you to read that is just spectacular. Some other pieces of evidence of relatedness that are really specific and important to be able to analyze. And then finally, we're going to get to the important dates and times of key events in the evolutionary in our history of life, and we're going to wrap it up with a giant cladogram. And the exciting thing is that cladogram that we're going to do, we're going to use that in every single lecture from here on out. Doesn't that sound exciting? Of course it does. Let's go.